in Blender, when you go to this icon and right here in the render settings, change its cycles. These are the render settings I'm talking about. Now we have the default settings right there, and that is just how much samples are going to be used in the viewport and denoising of that. And in the render it has a different set of, I'll turn it down to 1. In the render we have different settings, so it goes up to 4096 right now. What you can do for low quality test renders, you can set the noise threshold to 0.1 and then the samples to something like 20 for really low quality. Then you could do something like 50 samples, 0.05 for medium low quality testing, 128 and 1.1 for relatively high quality, and then 256 for high quality but not flawless, and then 512 for really good quality. Then you have these bounces right here. So basically, if you have a volume and it doesn't work, then you can increase the bounce. That makes it so the light can bounce this amount of times from a particle in the volume or a voxel. So that's basically when you put transparent bounces to 0, then glass doesn't, then glass is black because it can't bounce the light through the surface. We have motion blur, you can always turn that on. This motion blur at the default setting is a little bit smooth, so if you want to have a subtle motion blur, you can put it something like this, maybe like this. It's always nice to have that checked on when you're rendering images where the object is in motion, or the camera. Then we have color management. Here you can leave this, and AGX is the best one here because it has the highest dynamic range. It's only available after version, I don't know, 3.8 or something. I'm not sure, but it's around that time it got added. And then you can select false color to check your exposure. So we can take this light right here, for example, and then put the power to 2000. It's more exposed. And you can see right here, this is the exposure ranges. So if I put this to 6000, it gets yellow and orange, and 10,000. It gets red, which is really bright. Look at that, and at 40,000, this white patch appears, and the white patch means that there's no more detail there. So that is what we don't want. So we can turn it down to 30,000 to get rid of some of that. Normally we only want really small spots of this, and also not very much of this red color, and then a nice variety of all the colors in between, just as a baseline. But of course you can do your own stuff right And if you're happy with the amount of lighting, you just want to make sure that it's not too much white and red or too much darkness. You can increase the exposure or something so it looks right, or increase your individual lights if that's better, and then switch back to AGX because it will actually render out in false color if you don't do that. Right, and you can also check use curves and then make curve like this. But yeah, if you know curves. Right, and then we can hit render image, and if you want to render animation, then you can click render animation, but first we have to set the output settings here. So select the folder, call it export of the project you have, and then in the export folder you can make a new folder called 1, and that's the first try exporting the frames, because maybe some setting is wrong or the compositor isn't hooked up. By the way, the compositor is automatically activated on all animation images right here. You can turn that off so the compositor won't affect the images. But if it's turned on, and that's by default, the images in the animation will always be composited. You can select your format here, JPEG, PNG. I use JPEG often if I don't need to use alpha channel, because PNG has RGB alpha and JPEG has only RGB. And in JPEG you can use the quality slider, and JPEG is much smaller than PNG and really not less, and really doesn't have less quality. And you can also use OpenEXR for uncompressed or very high quality footage with a very high bit depth, I mean. Right. Then you can adjust your frame range here again, and you can select your frame rate here. There is the option for time stretching, where you have your 100 frames and you map them to a different frame rate, which could be useful for when you want to adjust the length of an animation for a project. You can check render region, and I believe that splits the render up into multiple renders, which get rendered one after another. So that might be useful if your computer doesn't get over the render. And right here we have our resolution. If you decrease the slider, it basically at 50% it only takes half the pixels, so it literally decreases the resolution. And then we can click on here and select 4K, because, and we can, if we want, select 4K, right? And 4K will be, and 4K is, it will automatically be applied to our camera. So if we change this to 2000, it will be square, right, like this. Camera, so that will automatically be changed. If you have multiple cameras, you can select a camera as the camera who should take the picture by select camera and then pressing Ctrl Alt 0 on that, which also snaps the camera to your photo. So I think it might work, press 0, which lets you go to the camera view. And that's pretty much it. You get sharper images if you decrease the samples and increase the resolution to 4K, then you have a lot of pixels and it looks nice, but it isn't completely true to the lighting situation. So you can also go, you can go with 4,512 samples as a good render. But it would take a long time, and for an animation you can just render out an image and then multiply the time it took to render out that image by the number of images, and then divide it by 60 to see the hours, if that is the case, if it is divisible by 60, and then if it is larger than 60, and then you can see how long it would take, and you can decrease the samples, increase the noise threshold to bypass that quality decrease, and increase or decrease your resolution. And also this right here for easy resolution access. Also, in an animation, the quality always gets, the compressing of an image is always a little time factor. So if you have a faster computer and that does make a difference, you can increase the quality, which will make it bigger and less compressive, so less compression and bigger file. And you can uncheck the compositor if you don't need it, because that will be two steps. This will be inexistent and this will be faster then. If you don't have any compositing, I don't think it will make it faster if you check compositing. And also denoise is always checked on with me. So if you do want to denoise it in a different program or in post-processing, you can uncheck that, and it will also decrease the render times, but really only significantly if you make an animation render, because it will take like a couple seconds at the end of a picture. So if you have 500 pictures, that will take a bit of time. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.